When we are scheduling our projects, we begin by establishing the required project tasks and their durations. We often do this by asking the resources tasked with carrying out the activity how long it will take them, or by using data from historically similar projects. The problem with this approach is that individuals will generally give an answer which will enable them to deliver on their commitments. So, for example, they will give a task duration with a close to 100% probability that it will be achieved. What we are effectively doing here, of course, is introducing a buffer into our task. And if we apply this 100% probability to each task duration, then in theory we should finish all projects on time. But the reality is that we don't, due to a number of reasons. There's Parkinson's law, that work expands to fill the time available. Often we procrastinate, we don't necessarily begin the task when we should, or we are stretched over too many tasks at the same time, so we're constantly switching between activities and unable to focus properly. Or there may be key constrained resources, particular subject matter experts, for example, or equipment that is limited and overcommitted. The question is, does this matter? As the law of averages says that some tasks will finish early and others late, so things should even out over time. But again, reality doesn't work this way. If you finish a task early, you may choose to sit on this work, as you may be asked to deliver in this reduced duration next time. Or the next project task may simply not be ready to start. And this is why projects often run late. So how can critical chain project management help? Critical chain project management requires a mindset change, that people use the true 50% probability task duration estimates. The buffers are thus removed from the individual task level and added to the parts of the project where they are needed. The use of critical chain project management therefore enables projects to be more accurately tracked and, in theory, should increase the predictability and consistency of project delivery, particularly in multiple project, resource-constrained environments. There are 4 main steps in critical chain project management. As stated previously, in critical chain project management, we still use buffers, but we do not buffer every task. Instead, we buffer only where needed. So if on our original plan, each task had a 100% probability of completion within the stated task duration, then the task duration of each individual task is cut in half, and the buffer used at the end of the project. A helpful heuristic here is that the length of the project buffer is 50% of the duration that has been cut from each individual task. Step 2 is to take into account where the critical path lies. In critical chain project management, we call this the critical chain, which is the critical path with the addition of resource constraints. And also where sets of activities feed into the critical path, we place feed-in buffers. An example of this is shown on the final slide. We can also use resource buffers to add in additional buffers where scarce resources are needed for a particular task. These are used to add additional time at each activity that precedes a scarce resource task, thus maximising the chances of that task being finished before the scarce resource task is required. In critical chain project management, project start times are staggered so that our scarce or constrained resources are only working on one task at a time. There is a very important behavioural change associated with critical chain project management, and this is in the production of the estimated task durations. Individuals do have to accept that the planned task durations will be based on a 50% completion probability, so half their tasks will overrun. This is acceptable as the buffers are there to allow for this. Critical chain project management should not be viewed as a panacea for all the ills of project management. As Gray and Larson explain in Chapter 8, the jury is still out in terms of critical chain project management's breadth of application. Critical chain also requires a mindset, culture and behaviour change in projects. Note too that it's really important that critical chain project management should not be implemented midway through a project.